Vijeta, that's it. I think we are live on Facebook. So I'll begin right away. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 7th episode of the web series Decoding NEP 2020, brought to you by Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning in association with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. My name is Meenu Chopra, and I accord a very warm welcome to everyone. Breakthrough innovation occurs when we bring down boundaries and encourage disciplines to learn from each other. This quote by Gyan Nagpal, an award-winning talent strategist and author, highlights the need for multidisciplinary approach in today's learning, since limitless learning can only take place in this hyper-competitive world if multidisciplinary approach is adopted. For today's session, we have with us luminaries from the field of education. Our first panelist is Mr. Kamal Zamani, Academic Director of International Delhi Public School, Srinagar. IDPS is a leading educational organization imparting quality education. Mr. Zamani has tenanted posts of senior leadership as Vice Principal, Glory High School, Shantiniketan, Founder Principal, Army Goodwill Public School, Rajouri. He has served as member of International Principals Network and Global Education Leaders. He has received acclaim and awards in the field of education for his invaluable and path-breaking contribution for the promotion of social welfare, education, arts, and culture. We are privileged to have you amidst us as a panelist, sir.
Thank you so much.
We have with us Dr. Deepak Raj Singh Bisht, Principal, Elcon Public School, Delhi, who has been associated with the education sector for over 2 decades, out of which he has served in leadership roles for over 12 years. During this time, his mettle as a leader in school system and commitment to academic excellence have received due recognition. He was awarded the Best Principal Award by SOF. He's been the proud recipient of Paryavaran Dronacharya Award. His achievement as a true leader is seen from the fact that the Sagar School, Alwar, was ranked #1 co-educational boarding school in Rajasthan consecutively for 5 years under his leadership. We are honored to have you amongst us today, sir. Our panelists.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our panelist, Brother Maheshwara Chaitanya ji, currently serves as the chairman of the undergraduate admissions of the School of Engineering, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, Deputy Controller of Examinations of Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, Amritapuri campus, and also serves as the Contest Director, International Collegiate Programming Contest, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, for the past 10 years. He has more than 14 years of teaching experience in the field of computer science and engineering. We are extremely honored by your presence, Maheshwara ji. I welcome the moderator for the session, Mrs. Devyani Kapoor. Mrs. Kapoor is an educator, an author, and a thought leader. She is the founder and CEO of Edudevs, the School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. An ex-principal, she carries over 30 years of experience with her in education sector and has worked with key brands in the educational industry. She is credited with introduction of a number of innovative pedagogical techniques for effective classroom management, quality circle time, lesson planning, experiential learning, and student empowerment techniques. A very warm welcome to you, Mrs. Kapoor. I now hand over this stage to you.
Thank you so much, Meenu ma'am. I heartily welcome all our esteemed panelists to yet another episode of Decoding NEP, the multidisciplinary approach, making it a reality. For decades now, it has been a matter of common concern that students find it difficult to draw meaning out of why they are learning what they are learning. You see, there is a complete disconnect between the curriculum and the student takeaway. The result is low student engagement, classroom disruption, and low student achievement. For years, we see probably last 5 decades or so, innovative educators have been pondering over this question and have been striving to come up with a curriculum which is rigorous, which is relevant, and which is engaging for the students. A curriculum which is not purely textbook driven, a curriculum which is interdisciplinary, a curriculum which involves students to be involved in projects and hence give them a lot of experience. A curriculum where knowledge is not mere memorization of facts and figures, but promotion of higher order thinking skills. The list may go on, and we can keep going on considering the integrated curriculum. The beauty of the why we are sitting here today is the new education policy, which after 34 years came up with and emphasized on the need to move on to multidisciplinary form of education, which would enable the development of not just the enhancement of knowledge, but also critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability, flexibility. In a fast changing world, a world which is changing in leaps and bounds with things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, we really don't know next 5 years what will be the professions that our students would be interested in, or what would be the newer professions that the world will be looking at. However, certain core skills will never change. Critical thinking, collaboration, research, these things will not change. And thankfully, our new education policy did recognize this. Now, without spilling much beans on the table and letting our esteemed panelists show us and enlighten us on their thoughts, I would come directly to our ice-breaking question, which is regarding the multidisciplinary approach. We all understand this is primarily an approach which focuses on the disciplines. The approach relates on different subjects around a common theme. My ice-breaking question, it will go in the order of, first, it will go to Mr. Kamal Zamani, followed by Maheshwar Chaitanya ji, and then Dr. Deepak Bish. So, sir, NEP talks about the multidisciplinary approach, which has existed on and off on the fringes of academia. We've been talking about multidisciplinary approaches. Some of the very, very progressive schools or schools in tier 1 cities were toying with the ideas. They integrated it also within the curriculum. The approach also relates different subjects around a common theme, as I just said. Now that we are looking at it with a renewed interest in our classrooms, now that it is a policy mandate, how do you think students could be introduced to this wide variety of methodology in a multidisciplinary curricula for a better understanding of the subject matter? So over to you, Mr. Zamani, but I request all my panelists to please adhere to the time limit as there is so much which lies in store. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. What I believe in, what is my principle is that among the greatest of all services which can possibly be rendered to Almighty God is education and training of students or children. Multidisciplinary approach is the future of classroom learning and is important focus area of National Education Policy 2020. But getting there will not be easy. Certain existing pitfalls and outdated practices, such as those which I'm going to mention, will have to be abandoned in order to introduce the multidisciplinary curriculum as part of our formal education system. The first one is a rote learning will have to be replaced by more dynamic and engaging methods of teaching, like inquiry-based learning, activity and project learning, learning by doing, cooperative learning, and others. The lists are many. The second thing is that lower order thinking skills of remembering and understanding and applying must lead to higher thinking skills that enable learners and students to engage in application, evaluation, and creation of knowledge. The third thing is that old and the limiting approaches of classroom control and management will have to give way to a more engaging and enabling approach, which is support joyful learning. Because someone rightly says that joy gives us wing. In times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. The fourth thing is that students will have to be liberated from their near total dependence on teachers and textbooks, where they can find sufficient motivation to assume ownership for their own learning. And fifth one is the assessment and evaluation of learning must stop judging students' performance based on final result alone. They must stop. And we have to introduce other factors like, based on the caliber, based on the potential and efforts of the students.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zamani. Very crystal clear 5-point program which you have laid on the table. Over to you, Chaitanya ji.
So I will just put light on some applications, because I have been talking or I have been teaching for few years with the engineering students. So my take on this multidisciplinary approach, and when the students come from the school to the higher education or a university education, what they need is they need the exposure towards different disciplines, first thing, different knowledge, and how they apply or the concepts whatever they have learned. So I'll just cite a few examples where a commerce student in this current situation, in this COVID situation, a commerce student can identify how far the people have been affected with the financial loss. A science student or a student who is undergoing biology, who wish to pursue career in healthcare, he can always do some research on the data available in the internet. That is applying whatever they have learned so far in the classrooms. Whereas a student who wish to pursue some engineering program, they will have to come up with technology. But is that enough? No, it is not enough. As you rightly pointed in the beginning, when we talk about the keyword, the so-called keywords now, the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, robotics, every domain or every student coming out from the school needs to get exposure on these technologies. It is not only about the use, but also about the misuse. So finally, what happens is when you talk about a multidisciplinary approach, a commerce student should be able to handle the technological part. Let us say in financial accounting, he wants to pursue financial accounting. Let us say he wants to join BCom or he wants to become a chartered accountant. And finally, when he ends up with a company for a job, he has to be well versed with technology. So technology has become inevitable now. So when you bridge the fundamental knowledge, whatever I have, and I try to apply that concept in the practical scenario, practical context, technology becomes very important. And not only that, a computer science student or a biology student or engineering student cannot confine himself or herself to that specific domain. I'll conclude by telling one more example. We have a hospital in Cochin where one of our doctor, she's a surgeon, she's a gynecologist. She completed 600 robotic surgeries in the past 6 years time. So what does it mean? It means that even a doctor is expected to understand how the machines work. So when we say that a doctor is fundamentally a biology student, so a biology student will have to understand what is engineering. A commerce student will have to understand how the IT work, how AI work, how machine learning work. A journalist, suppose if a student pursuing English, he wants to join media or journalism, they have to understand how they can find out fake news in the internet. So that's all what I want to put down in the introductory session. Thank you, ma'am.
Great, great insights and very live and enriching examples. We'll come back to the discussion once again. Thank you so much, Chaitanya-ji. Over to Dr. Bish. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ma'am, the first thing actually I just wanted to, the government of India taking this initiative, focusing on multidisciplinary approach, will have the far-reaching effects. And what actually we are aiming for this approach, to me, to create the leaders, to create independent thinkers, to create problem solvers, and to create innovators. Now, how to do that, how to introduce actually these methodologies to the students, I think we need to have, the first thing is the awareness program for the children. They need to be made aware of what this multidisciplinary approach is all about. They need to be given exposure of having a comparative study between the existing disciplinary system and the multidisciplinary system. And they will be able to draw conclusions how this multidisciplinary approach is better over the disciplinary approach. So, and also they would be guided, they would be counseled, they would be mentored, for these programs. And I mean, if you look at this multidisciplinary approach, they also need to be focusing on the learning outcomes. What would be the learning outcomes of this approach? Like, for example, the children will have the deeper knowledge and understanding of the concept they are studying. They will learn the better skills. They will learn the adaptability. They will learn the accommodate and acknowledge the perspective of different people and different streams. They will be able to collaborate. They will be able to communicate. So, so through these, we will be able to, introduce these methodologies to the children. They will be able to draw conclusion how this is better. I'll just conclude with one example. We generally see, this is a real life example. We see a road is being constructed, and after a few months, you see that road is again being digged by the different department for laying, the wires. and then the forest department. So there is no coordination. They are all working in different disciplines. That is how our current education system is working. Where approach, when these people and these experts from different departments, the engineer of pedagogy, the environmentalist, the socialist, the sociologist, and the architect, they come together before the road is being constructed. I think we will be able to solve the problem which we are facing at the moment. So that is what I have actually in the beginning of in my beginning remarks.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think we got some great insights in our ice-breaking question, which set the tone for the entire session, from Mr. Zamani giving us 5 things which need to be abandoned to get into the multidisciplinary system, with Chaitanya ji telling us the importance of any stream to be blended with technology, because that would be the order of the day. And with Dr. Vish telling us the critical aspects which would be, nurtured in any student, or if we follow the multidisciplinary approach, the critical aspects of the 21st century citizenship. Moving on to our next segment, which is more in-depth, and where you can get a time about anything between 3 to 5 minutes. The first question in round 1, again, is to address to Mr. Kamal Zamani. Sir, the benefits of multidisciplinary curriculum, both for teaching and learning, we've just seen, and there is no doubt about it. Now, for an integrated curriculum to be effective, I'm sure you, being the head of an institution, you would be understanding that it is not that easy. It needs to be well thought out and developed. The teacher can't just walk in the class and decide at that time within those stipulated 40 minutes. Could you suggest some steps that need to be considered by educators, by the heads of the departments, when they are developing an integrated lesson plan? Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the key points with the National Education Policy asks us to do is to that, ask the teachers to be more systematic. What is the first steps? Every aspect of our life, works, we plan, works on a plan. From birth to death, education to job, child to family, there is always a plan. If you want to go somewhere to, for example, Delhi or some other places, we plan first, that we budgeting it. If we want to stay at someone's, house, we inform them that we are coming, we stay for many days. And if not, we book the hotel, we, budget that. So for everything in life, we go as per the plan. So why not in teaching? That also needs, planning. Teaching any lesson needs a plan too. And, the first step into building an effective lesson plan is to identify the portion of a chapter or lesson that you would teach. And then comes the next step, is understanding the fact that the lesson plan is basically a blueprint of what you are going to do while teaching in a class, keeping in mind the factors that are important to focus on while teaching. Some of the factors which we can, address are, there are many factors, but the main factors are the students attentive? One. Are they able to relate and understand what you are teaching. Then the other factors are, does the topic remind them of anything they might have previously learned? Is the class interesting and engaging? Is the medium of language used comprehend by the students? Do they understand the way you speak? Okay, and is your body language, is appropriate? So these are all the factors which we have to implement while we are making an effective lesson plan. So, for example, if we are planning to give students homework, you should do it. You should do it too also. You have to do more things for preparing a lesson plan, like read the portion to be taught thoroughly and outline the main, points there. So with the, highlighter. Imagine how would like to start your class. So there are many ways, you cannot abruptly go and start your, lesson, because there are so many psychological facts which you have to consider. Think about the activities related to the topic that that would engage the students. We have to think. So elaborate the learning outcome of the students. And one of the things which is interests me a lot, which sometimes in planning which we have to do, is using humor and puzzle in teaching. For example, I'll give you this thing. I'll ask the audience, okay, how to extract iron from 5. 5 means F-I-V-E. How to extract? In this case, you make the students engaged. And when, class environment is engaging and, happy, you'll find that, the students are more attentive. And then, you need to choose which skill to be implemented. Skills like, communication skills, creativity, enthusiasm, confidence, and many other skills are there. And then you write down all these steps which you want to follow in your teaching. For instance, the questions which you might ask, the explanation you would give, the practical or project you would give to students. I have also done the same thing, and I have written all the points which I'm discussing. I've written, in this very simple this thing. So these are the things. And then last is the final touch which you have to give. Whether what you make is grammatically correct. And then, however, the most important factor for your lesson plan is to be effective, is to observe its application on yourself. You have to go through it. If you feel happy, then go ahead. If you don't feel happy that, this lesson plan is not up to my, mark, and it doesn't make students happy, then you have to revisit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. Very well, laid down effective pointers to create an effective lesson plan. I would just like to add here, because I'm very tempted to add that one thing, as you said, it's right, planning, but planning in collaboration becomes, because for a multidisciplinary lesson plan, it is very important for the entire, team, not just of mathematics, but of English, of other disciplines, science and all, to come together and create a very, very holistic lesson plan. And I'm sure this would be happening. And also one more point, I don't know, I want to just kind of suggest that probably till middle school, a very effective way of multidisciplinary approach is to introduce the project-based learning, which provides the students with hands-on learning experiences, and try letting the students come up with the question that they want to address. And probably very good, sir. Thank you so much for the lovely inputs, and I'm sure our viewers would have taken down the pointers for creating an effective lesson plan. I would want to now address my next question to Dr. Deepak Bish, because this is something which is related to what earlier I discussed with Mr. Zamani. Sir, till now, the multidisciplinary approach, let's be very honest, was being applied and used by the progressive schools of tier 1 cities. And, educators were throwing the idea in tier 2 and other cities, right? Now, do you think the teachers need to allow students to think about issues from another side as well? When I say teachers need to allow, means, is it possible that the teachers would be able to imbibe this multidisciplinary approach seamlessly? And how will this interdisciplinary thinking be promoted as a necessary skill? Like probably in your own school, how would you encourage the educators, first thing, are we ready in schools to introduce this, and by which grade? Because till date, interdisciplinary approach was more like a project. It was still the middle schooling. But now when it comes as a policy mandate, what are your suggestions? And we would like to hear from you. Yes, sir.
The first thing, do the teacher need to allow students? Absolutely yes. Because, it's not only the students, but it is also the teachers. They would learn a lot from, allowing the children to ask questions beyond their subject. And it will also help, it will also help the students to have the deeper understanding of the concept, and they would also become the problem solvers. They would also become like to accept the perspective of the people. So it will be a complete 360 degree. Therefore, it is absolutely yes, the teachers, they do need to allow children to ask questions beyond their own subject. As far as like the promotion of these skills are concerned, I mean, we need to see the job of future will require skills such as critical thinking, which we have been mentioning, such as logical reasoning, problem solving, and soft skills like communication and collaboration. So these skills also help lateral thinking, which is necessary to solve the modern day business problems. And this kind of education, this multidisciplinary and the interdisciplinary thinking also develops the capacities of human beings, like intellectual, aesthetic, social, physical, emotional, ethical, in an integrated manner. So in addition to, in addition to being successful at their workplace, they teach how to learn instead of what to learn. So these skills enable lifelong learning and equip students not just for a career but for life. And as far as how I will encourage, say for interdisciplinary thinking, when we are talking about, as you rightly said, about the project-based learning. So I would encourage, I will have training for the teachers. That is the most important thing. Say, for example, take an example of a rock as a theme for the integrated project, and then we ask the different subject teachers to, give the subject knowledge. For example, physics teachers talk about the physical property of the rock. Chemistry teachers talks about the chemical composition. the language teachers talks about, the importance of like the language part of it. Geography teachers talks about the types of rock we have, whether it is metamorphic, whether it is sedimentary, so then the child will have a complete 360-degree knowledge, and he will understand the perspective. So deeper understanding of the concept will be there. So that is what I would propose actually, the project-based learning, research-based learning, lots of hands-on activities for students. But firstly, I think we'll have to train the teachers for that.
Yes, sir. Here I would want to, just take another view from you. It is when we are sitting here and discussing and deliberating all this, it is a very rosy picture. It's a very utopian model, and we would like this thing to happen. But thinking, that is what I want to know, that from a teacher's perspective, when we have a big chunk of syllabus, the curriculum is designed like this, how many topics do you think, and how initially, earlier they would select a few topics, probably 2 in the whole year, and create it into a multidisciplinary topics. But now the policy says everything, we have to incorporate the multidisciplinary approach into our day-to-day pedagogy. So for that, the burden on the teachers will increase definitely. Then the heads will have to give them that kind of time for planning, because that will be an integrated syllabus. So, sir, I want to hear your views on that actually. How practically this would be implemented, because what the policy says, what is ideal, yes, we know that is very good. But how would probably you would implement in your school that? Yes, very briefly, sir.
Ma'am, actually, I think it's very, very important, and that's very pertinent question you have asked. I would suggest I would go actually from the very initial stage of learning, where the children's cognitive skills are still developing. So that would be actually the age I would suggest, the initial age we'll have to start with. And if we are saying as a pedagogy, we have to implement it across the spectrum, I don't think we will be successful. I think we need to go phase-wise. As you rightly said, if we are implementing it across the classes, then we need to have 2 or 3 projects per subject per year, and we design our curriculum accordingly. But instead of doing that, I think we are aiming to achieve this by 2030. If you take actually initial classes doing this completely, there is a less syllabus. You don't have the pressure of completing syllabus, and you have enough flexibility and freedom, remaining in the framework which is designed by CBSE or other boards, so that gives you enough flexibility to adopt any method, because you don't have the pressure of completing syllabus and board examination and so. So initial, from the very initial stage, I would say we need to phase-wise, it has to be implemented in schools. We should not be rushing, actually, covering the entire school. That's what I.
Because yes, till the middle school, I think it will be easier, because if a topic of environment is being taught, then all various subject teachers can come and contribute towards it and take the topic accordingly. But the challenge and the tussle will be from grade 9 to 12, where integrating, but then the requirement is there. The requirement is there, as Chaitanya ji was discussing, that you can't, you can't exist in isolation and in the boundaries of a discipline. Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir. Great insight. Yes, Chaitanya ji, I'm really tempted to now come to you and understand what is the scenario that exists in the higher ed when it comes to multidisciplinary. So, the sad story is our most talented students are very frequently lost to universities and organizations in the West. And we celebrate their, rise to senior positions in global corporates. And we just land up reading articles and we feel very proud about it. Now, is it the lack of evolution in our education system? And ironically, parallelly, accompanied by a remarkable pace of change in the world that's happening. First is this. And then I would want to know that in response to the global changes that are happening, how prepared the higher education is to seamlessly, integrate the various streams together. Yes, Chaitanya.
Okay, very wonderful and tough question. So let
Yes.
me cite a small big example. So in the last week, I saw a news in the media that 10th class, two 10th class girls from Bangalore, they were able to raise something like 2 lakhs in 24 hours for the to buy the oximeter. So what is it that made them, in fact, what encouraged them or what prompted them to think of such a kind of scheme where they can raise some money and help the patients or the hospitals? So that kind of thought process, are we really able to encourage such kind of children? And as rightly suggested by Dr. Deepak, the first and foremost thing is that the teachers need to be trained. We can certainly have innovations, we can certainly have research, we can certainly have the changes in the system. The first and foremost thing is the educating the teachers first, so that it can be further imparted to the children. So coming back to your question, I have a very good example or a model. I will not say that it is something really great, but at the same time, that will serve the purpose of in this present context. So we have something like live-in labs. So live-in labs is nothing but, as rightly pointed again, I'll go back to what Dr. Deepak said in the initial stage, that building a road and digging by different departments and finally there is no road at all. So our students, our engineering students, especially the civil engineering students, so they went to a village in Rajasthan and they started trying to find out which all villages have the water shortage and what is the kind of problems they are facing in getting water. So what exactly they came up with? And they came up with a solution by laying down the pipeline. So the entire pipeline was built by our own students and faculty. So why are they doing it? So they are able to understand what the real problem in the society is. So being an engineer, he can just sit in a, with a white collar, he can just sit in an office and find out what the issue is. But getting into that realistic situation, understanding the problem, and you apply whatever you have learned so far. And as you said, in the West, the Western universities, the universities, international universities, what they do, they have something called as community service. And that community service is very, very important, compulsory for the students to understand what is happening in the real situation, real life. So we have students coming from abroad and our students join the team. So there is a cultural diversity. So they need to be exposed to such a kind of situation where they will interact with different type of people. It is not, I am not just interacting with my classmates. I am interacting with totally a different set of people. They may not be literate. They may be, people which doesn't have any exposure to technology or education at all. So let us assume that you have a department called as humanities. You have a department with social sciences. You have a department with for engineering, or those students who undergo the technological programs. And you are able to bring in all these together and understand the societal problems. And let us say you want to publish a paper, you can always bring in research departments or English departments where they can come up with journals, where they can come with the research papers. So this is how we need to expose the students. But at the same time, it is really important at this moment that and again I always talk about the way in which the last year CBSE exams were conducted. The principals became the problem solvers. The principals had to coordinate with the health department. They had to coordinate with the doctors. They had to coordinate with the transportation department. So they were real problem solvers just to implement or conduct the examination. We never ever thought, right? We were not at all in such a thought, even in dream, that such a situation will arise. Because I know my sisters went to the school early morning to conduct exam in the afternoon. So which means that kind of an arrangement, and that creates a kind of critical thinking how the impact will be of the solution. So I have a solution, but what will be the impact of the solution? So that kind of exposure, if you are able to give to the teachers as well as the students, and that has now started in most of the higher education institutions, and that is why top tier universities in the country, they are able to come up with solutions even during this pandemic time. That may be in terms of healthcare, that may be in terms of uh, finding out the solution for the issues, or technological thing, or biology, or whatever. So how they deploy. So for example, again I can cite one more example where our students build robots, and those robots are now in AIMS in Delhi. Those were MTech students, because they found that infection is very less, so that the nurses can be replaced with the help of robots, and the human infection is less. So how they think, how we allow them to create thinking, that critical thinking, and make them exposed. So the project-based study, experiential learning, and making them apply the knowledge whatever they have. And it has to start from the teachers, and teachers alone can do it at the grassroots level. So that is what I want to convey at this point. Thank you, ma'am.
Wonderful answer, sir, because I was looking for an answer which was not unstructured and not a kind of a solution in terms of how will. So it is very well said. And actually, I'm tempted to hear, talk about when I was teaching way back. So there was a program that was known as Youth Power. And that was a model where 4 or 5 students were selected. They would choose a problem from the community. And then they had to build a whole working model around it with the solution. So right from choosing a problem to finding a solution to relating it to the community to fundraising, and it was a live model which could later be implemented as well. So very important at each stage, especially higher ed, also senior secondary. When I talk about schools, it's important. And I think national education policy does talk about, though it talks about internships, but we are going beyond that. And we've seen live examples during pandemic. Nobody is asking anyone, but students are coming up proactively with their apps. The doctors are coming up with such apps that helping out the lay citizens and laymen. Similarly, they are mustering support, looking at logistics. I think this is what is required, and probably this was lacking in our system. And thank you so much. It was a beautiful and a very well, deep insight to all of us. Again, coming back to Mr. Zamani for a second round. So in the school system, now everything is related to, everything honestly boils down to assessment. So the effectiveness of any innovative pedagogical reform which is introduced to pass the limits of this particular assessment scenario. Because at the end of the day, I think we put the process on the side and we give overimportance to the product, which is in the form of marks. However, we cannot, ignore it as well. Now, in this particular multidisciplinary approach, what would be the parameters of assessment? Who would be assessing? Who would get what percentage to assess? Will the students be able to evaluate their ability and view a topic from multiple angles? So would you please throw some light? Because at the end of the day, I'm sure all our educators at back of the mind would be thinking, okay, we've created a lesson plan collaboratively, but finally, what about assessment? Who's going to do it? And how will it happen? Yes, sir.
As I said, before that, national education policy, they are always, thinking about that, how to systematic our system has to be. And assessment means it's a systematic process by which we assess the performance of our students through tests. Okay, there are lots of ups and downs regarding with this assessment, and then of the system of education. So for 15 years we study 3 years of kindergartens, and then primary, and then for 15 years, and then at the end of the after 15 years, our whole life, a student's life, depends how to appear for that 3 hours of maths exam, or this physics exam, or this, and they spend lakhs of rupees, and then if we appear, if we failing that 3 hours of examination, then our life is gone for 6. So there are we have to think other ways of assessment to assess the students. One of the things is that there is this assessment of, we call it rubric assessment. It is a scoring guide usually presented in graphic format, typically as a grid. It defines what is expected in a learning situation. Some type of assessment is subjective. For example, think about the painting in an art class, or for example, debate competition, or for example, dance competition. So there are various. How would you assign a percentage or grade to an art project? You need some kind of standard or some sorts of measure for this kind of alternative assessment. So there are 2 types of assessment, rubric assessment. One is the analytical, and the other one is holistic. Now in analytical assessment, it grades students' work on each component of a project, while in holistic, it grades the students' work on a whole project. You might for example, we all are familiar with kind of holistic this assessment. And in for example, in left column we have the categories. It is for example, excellent means 90% to 100, and then right column there is description, which for example, in if we talk about an exam, an English exam. So if it is for example 90 to 100%, means that ideas are thoroughly explained, and highly coherent this thing writing, and almost no grammatical mistake. Then we come down to good this thing, which is about 80 to 89%, where in description teachers write that okay, the ideas are explained, coherent writing, few grammatical mistakes. Then we come to satisfactory, then we come needs hard work. While in analytical assessment, the categories are different. Categories are for example, clarity of subjects, and then content, subject knowledge, teamwork, depth of discussion, methods used, organization, and so many other categories are also involved. And then the other, for description, we have, for example, beginning, development, and then accomplish, and this exemplary. These are, needs to be, discussed more. But, the other point, it is about, students' self-assessment. Schools, they have to introduce new ways to assess the students and to report to parents on child's learning. This change is one of the ways to introduce a school curriculum.
Right.
What is the student self-assessment? Actually, students, they have to take the ownership of their learning. And once they take the ownership of their learning, then sky is the limit. So then there is.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think very well said. Okay,
no,
sorry.
I'm still, I'm just a little bit more actually.
Yeah. Actually,
Okay.
we're running. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So it is, self-assessment is a process of which students look at their work and check and see where the focus their efforts more. They have to focus their efforts and make improvement. And it is often involves setting the goals at the beginning of the school year and checking with the teacher to make sure that they are meeting their goals. It is actually a skill and very important that they have to learn at a very young age. It helps them also to identify their strength and where they need to make improvement and adjustment. It also helps them to organize and bring more confidence and achieve their goals and this thing. So this is collaboration between the students, teachers, and parents.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That means, to sum up your dial, you meant that number one, we'll have to go beyond the marks. Rubric system will be a very important aspect. Second is the self-assessment, and I would also want to introduce the peer assessment. So thank you so much for your lovely insight. Moving on to, as we are running out of time, moving on to Dr. Bish. Dr. Bish, there is a lot of talk about service learning these days across the academia. I would want you to tell us what is service learning. Also, that considering that integrated curriculum, by creating an integrated curriculum, we are using service learning, as I just said. We are changing the teaching and learning experience. We've been discussing it, so very briefly, for both teacher and learner. So integrated curriculums allow students to have deeper understanding of the course, subject matter, how to apply. So their critical thinking, application skills, all they are enhanced. Also, that you said that first of all, we need to train our trainers. So what is your take on this particular preparedness of both students and teachers, and in terms of service learning? Yes, Dr. Bish, but very briefly, sir.
I'll just be brief, actually. So, I mean, the multidisciplinary approach when we're talking about, I think it will, as you rightly said, it will encourage and motivate the students for learning, and they will have the better grasp of the concept. They will have the deeper understanding, and they will learn the 21st century skills, and these 21st century skills which children are having will be polished by this approach, and these skills not only help actually in career, but will be very, very essential in the life as well of all the learners. So that's what I need to say.
Yeah. Right, the service learning is like experiential and helping students to take the experience of the whole process. Thank you so much, sir. Chaitanya ji, coming to you, we've been talking about integrated curriculum. The term, these are all jargons that we are using. Under the integrated curriculum, we have multidisciplinary approach, interdisciplinary approach, and transdisciplinary integration. Now, as an educator who are toying and exploring with this idea and just have had the exposure of an integrated curriculum, could you please throw some light on these different theories and probably make us understand what each of them in a simplest way mean? Yes, sir.
The first thing I have been, throughout this discussion, I have been talking about the way in which how we look at different subjects. For example, when you talk about this, the multidisciplinary approach, let us say the science group students or the science group teachers, how far the teachers are able to link their subject with similar type of, or in the same group, how far are they able to link the subject in the same group? For example, let us say a mathematical, a teacher teaching a mathematical course or subject, can they apply that mathematical concepts for to find out, because now the whole world is running with mathematical modeling, and that mathematical modeling itself is the applied mathematics, where we understand how far the infection will increase, or how can we stop the infection. So the solution is to find out, or the objective is to find out how to solve this problem, but applying the mathematics. So now mathematics is being applied in the healthcare or life science. How is it possible? How far the teachers can do that? So that is one way in which you try to bring in multidisciplinary approach within the same discipline. You have multiple subjects and you bring in those subjects to one platform. And let us assume that you take a theme. The best theme I always cite is the current data that is available in the internet. Now you have all the whatever you want, it is whatever you want under the sun, it is available in Google. You just do a Google search and you get the thing. So if you are able to link, let us say an English student wants to write some analysis on the COVID news. How many fake news came in and how many real news came in, and he is doing an online research. So that will help them to get not only just the research skills, but also how to utilize that internet. So utilization of internet is very, very important, because kids are getting much more smarter than the teachers, because they have their mobile phone or the gadget or whatever, and they're able to find out any data. So how is it possible for us to engage them effectively by giving them demanding type of assignments? For that, as again I should say that the educators or the teachers, they have to be ready. So this way if we are able to engage the children by training the teachers in the right way. And somebody was in the chat box, somebody said that the whole business model has to be moved out, from the school perspective. So my take on that is, see, when you bring in this integrated approach, if you are able to bring in technology, for example, now almost all the teachers, maybe 99.9% teachers are aware of Google Classroom. Maybe one year before or 2 years before, Google Classroom was there, but we were not aware at all. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible for you to utilize that platform so that you get time to invest in more and more research and more studies? So that is how we should think of. So this integration is not just about integrating subjects together, but integrating subjects and technology together, so that the teachers will get effective time for to study more and more, because now there are a lot of certification programs. So if you are able to bring in such kind of courses in as the part of the performance appraisal, yearly performance appraisal, the school, and if the teachers themselves are ready to take up such kind of certification programs, online courses, that will bring in more and more light into how to integrate this. Because again let me tell you, a visual media student nowadays can create a movie just with the help of a laptop. So how is it possible? Because of technology. There is nothing else required, because now we see that the whole film producing is going to OTT platforms. Everything is now released in Amazon. So what will happen with the theaters? The theaters? So the way in which we try to solve a problem. So this is how we can bring in different type of disciplines together to one common theme. As I earlier cited one example, let us say those students who were able to raise the funds for the COVID patients or hospitals, let us assume that they want to distribute equally so that it reaches the right audience. How do they analyze it? How can they find out the right hospitals, right patients? So all these are problem solving skills. And if you are able to bring in one theme, a project to solve a specific problem, because if you take now, pollution is the biggest issue here, traffic jam is the biggest issue here, water scarcity is the biggest issue here, digital divide is biggest issue here. Nobody is able, even now there are around 30% of the students who are not able to access the online education. How you solve it? So this can be, these kind of problems can be solved only if you are able to bring in integration. And a teacher cannot confine herself or himself to his subject alone. That is very, very critical and very important. And as an observer, or a teacher has to be an observer. So observing the surroundings or observing the society, they should be able to come up with the problems. That problems can be given to the students and let them apply whatever they have learned and try to come up with the solutions for the society with much more values. So I believe that, to conclude, I believe that such kind of integration, again I will come back to the same road construction told by Dr. Deepak. It will add values. It is not just integration, it will add values to the way in which the students think. Thank you, ma'am.
Great, sir. I think our educators and viewers would have got a fair idea that just leave the jargons, but the bottom line is that in the 21st century, you cannot survive because unless you integrate learning, whether it is integration of various discipline themes, or it is integration of skills, or integration of attitudes. Integration has to be there for effective problem solving. Thank you so much, sir. And now coming towards the end of our section, where we take up the questions from our audience. And sometimes I would encourage audience to write questions in question forms. Sometimes I can see so many, statements and so many random thoughts various viewers have said, but we've picked up few because of the paucity of time. So my first question is to Dr. Bish. This question is from Ms. Purnima Nagar. She says that can we have something multidisciplinary aspect appropriate to pre-primary?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. It is, as I said, I think we need to start it from the very initial stage, and maybe they are just learning the alphabet, they are learning things, but yes, we can have, for example, at pre-primary level, they are celebrating various international days. They are celebrating various days. For example, if the teacher make them aware of how they are collaborating with different things. Say, for example, the annual day, they are celebrating for pre-primary section. And there, the concept is taken from one subject, and the language teacher is actually seeing the language aspect of it. And a topic for example, the skit he's taking from say environmental studies, and the language teacher is adding the language contribution is there, and the art teacher adding about the decoration of the background and thing, so it will come out as a holistic project at the end of the day. So teachers need to look at the opportunity, how they can actually adopt this multidisciplinary, because it applies across the classes. It's not only at the pre-primary level, across the section it will be applicable, because the teacher also need to know the various subject it is applicable. So they discuss in chambers meeting, they are discussing the topic which they are going to teach children. So I think, yes, very much they can implement that. Maybe not at the nursery, but certainly at a preschool, they can.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure Purnima and Nagar, you would have got an answer to this. Yes, in pre-primary, there is a lot of scope for a multidisciplinary and integrated approach. My next question is to Chaitanya ji, and that question is from Mr. Arun Varhat Pandey, and he says, how about examining the relevance of a lesson being handled to real life situations before proceeding with the lesson in class? I think because you were giving such wonderful live examples, and I thought this question could be best addressed by you. Yes, sir.
So in fact, I saw the question before. Now coming back to what Mr. Kamal Zamani said in the beginning, the way in which you prepare the lesson plan, because he nicely has pointed, he has prepared a bullet list. So one very important thing which I used to practice is you have to spend extensive time in developing a lesson plan. And when you develop a lesson plan, in fact, if you are teaching the same course for the second time or the third time, the time will be less. The time taken to prepare a lesson plan will be very less. So at the time of lesson plan itself, you should have that the possible assignments, what all assignments can be given to the students, what all questions can be given to the students. So that time you will have to find out, of course, again, I would say that the teachers will have to struggle at least for 1 or 1.5 years in the initial stages, because over a period of time you will certainly gain the experience, very great experience, because nowadays almost all the documents are publicly available in Google, and there are a lot of case studies available in all subjects, all the subjects.
Yes.
So my suggestion to that, or my answer to that question is, in fact, when you prepare the lesson plan, you make sure that each and every concept is related to a real-time example. And you can certainly find such examples from the internet. It is a matter of sitting and searching and finding out from reputed universities, because most of the reputed universities publish their assignments online. So this has to happen at the time of lesson plan, so that you will get some time. By the time you reach that topic, you will get some time to think and keep thinking about that assignment or the solutions on how they can submit, and ensure that whatever assignments or whatever concepts in the real life you are relating to, that creates an impression in the mind of the student, that creates a kind of curiosity of the mind in the student, so that it will last forever. Then they will never ever forget the concept. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure this is such a great answer, that relating the lesson first to real life situations. I'm sure Mr. Arun would have found a satisfactory answer to it. And one question, which is, I can imagine this straight from the heart of a teacher. This is addressed to Mr. Zamani. This is question from Ms. Himani Mehta. And I think, so how can students be encouraged to do their online tests with honesty? Yes, Mr. Zamani, if you could address this question.
Okay, this is, very, actually, very tough questions. How to become, it is a new things for the students. Actually, we should not think that we should not think that that students they learn from this thing. We should not expect actually that that's honest. We have to teach them honesty actually. Yeah, it is.
Well said, very well said.
Process. It's a process. We have to teach them honesty. Actually, because of, this COVID and, lockdown, students, they, they miss that, school discipline. Even in school also, some of the students used to cheat also, in that during exam and this thing. But it's a long life, process, and we have to encourage the students, motivate the students that the best way of learning is to be honest. And then,
Very right, very well said.
yeah,
Very well.
and then we have to encourage them that, best policy is the honesty. And the honesty
very well
comes
said. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Here, I would want to add something. Yes.
I would
so
also,
Mr. Zamani's answer, Mr. Zamani's answer was very prudent. Mine would be pragmatic, that the teacher has to be smarter than the student. And so when in the online testing, give them higher order thinking skill questions. Give them those questions where they do not find answers in the internet. They have to build up their own perspective. Yes, Dr. Vish, I'm sure you're also tempted to give an answer to this.
Yes, thank you so very much, ma'am. We all know, like, in what situation the children have been, we all have been during this pandemic. I would just simply say, if the children are not, they are just copying things during the online assessment, we should not be worried so much, I would say, because it is the assessment for learning. While the children are writing the answer, they're still learning. So that is my perspective of saying things. They're still learning. So, yes, gradually this is something new, and the technology people are working, the computer scientists are working, how to solve this problem. This is still a puzzle actually for everyone, for all the people in education sector. And it's not actually, it's a very valid question she had asked. It's across the schools, the same situation. You take any organization, children are copying, the results are not authentic. That is not, but still the children are being engaged, they have a schedule, they are doing things, and so I think that needs to be looked into. That's how I see things.
Very evolved, very evolved. Trying to say that we should not just look at the product, as in the delivery of the answers, but we should also give importance to the process and see that student is meaningfully engaged. And secondly, yes, what Dr. Zamani, Mr. Zamani said was very right, that honesty again, because we are talking about multidisciplinary approach here, and multidisciplinary approach is about integrating subjects, integrating attitudes, integrating skills. So yes, integrating attitude, a skill, honesty is a lifelong learning. It is an attitude which we need to inculcate only by helping them out that, listen, marks is important, but they are not important more than what your attitude towards life is. Thank you so much, all the panelists. It was such a wonderful and crisp session. I think by far one of the best, where the outcome has been to the point. And from bottom of my heart, I thank each and every panelist. And in the end, I would just like to say that the benefits of an integrated curriculum, both for teaching and learning, are endless, that we have seen. For an integrated curriculum to be effective, the curriculum needs to have a lot of thought, a lot of planning, a lot of collaboration. And we did talk about a few steps that need to be considered when developing an integrated curriculum. And I will list a few which I noted down during the course. Select achievable learning outcomes for the students. Consider what service experience are most likely to enable students to achieve their desired outcomes. Approach potential community partners. So you have to align with the community, as Chaitanya ji rightly said, that micro society model has to be followed. Plan the experience in detail, as Mr. Zamani said, and determine how you will prepare the students for the experience, as Dr. Vish said, that engaging them meaningfully is very important. Thank you so much for this very, very enriching session. And we will be back soon with another topic on decoding the National Education Policy 2020. Thank you, everyone. Namaskar.